Alrighty, we got day 4 of Gino's little journey to greatness, and it will be ride number 3. We have a change of venue today. We're at a local indoor arena, and I sort of ideally wouldn't mind running him around the round yard before I brought him out in a bigger yard. So what we're going to do is let him have a run around this yard and investigate it on his own. He's hovering down the fence because his paddock mate was in the paddock on the other, in the little arena on the other side. So he's going to do a bit of this for a while. But before I ride him in a big space or a bigger space like this, I would let them run around that big space and investigate it. So we're not trying to run him around and wear him out. I don't want any of that happening. But we do want him to finish investigating and playing before I get on. I talked on day 1 about, like it's always imperative to me that a horse follows. It depends on the horse and the situation. Like I know when a horse, and on day 1 he was turning and preparing to be caught. He wasn't ready to come walking out and marching out after me. There's a very different thing between a horse feeling like he can move and I'm asking him to stay here, as opposed to me hobbling and forcing him to stay here, or tying him up and forcing him to stay here. Like mentally he feels like he can move and he's hanging around at my request. It's almost like he's allowing me to ask him to stand. There's such a big difference between making it impossible to move. Make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult, but don't make the wrong thing impossible. And like when we hobble him and force him to stay here, or heaven forbid in the old days that we'd hobble and blindfold and everything else, and you kind of force them to deal with it, it's such a different mindset for the horse, as you could imagine. Long term, of course, I'm going to tie him up to saddle up. I'm going to go somewhere he needs to learn that. And after I handled his feet and I know he's comfortable with that, I'm also going to hobble his feet. And the only reason I would do that is like I talked about the other day when I had the rope around his legs. If, heaven forbid, he did get hung up in a fence and got stuck, I'd love to think that he just wouldn't panic and he'd stay there and he'd be good for us in the morning. If I teach him to come forward off pressure, and he's got that in his head, hopefully one day when it's really absolute and I tie him up, he might panic a little, but then realize, okay, there's pressure in front of me, I need to move in that direction to get rid of it. So he's pretty quiet, obviously. The main thing I've always sort of half thought about him is he might, get a little cranky about being asked to go. He also shows a hell of a lot of retention, where any lesson he's learnt, he pretty much keeps. G'day, thank you so much for watching. If you could like, share, subscribe, turn on the notifications bell, that would be awesome. Thank you. Cheers. And everything we're going to do is usually a request followed by a demand. Unless of course he does it and it's just a request. So we're in a big pen. It's a little bit like when I rode him in the round yard on day 1. There's going to be a bit of passengering involved. But you could also see he's walked straight off because he's got somewhere to go in here. He's not going round and round the yard. He's got somewhere to go, so I haven't even asked him to go, he's just wandered off. Which is another reason I'm trying to get in this big yard, because I don't want to have an unnecessary argument. If I can just offer him room and he'll go forward, that's awesome. When he finds a place to stand, and yes, I could kind of feel it coming, so I figured he'd stand soon. And we can check him out on all those weird things that people are going to do when they're riding. especially when they ride like a drunk person. Don't drink and ride, that's stupid. Especially on a young horse. So day one, some desensitizing, and then we asked him to move around a bit. Day two, we bent him a little bit more. Today I might be bending him and moving his hip around just if he gets going too quick. I'm, to a large extent, going to let him do what he kind of feels like doing. But if he's just going too quick, I don't really want him to get in the habit of that. But what's also important on this horse, that day that he says, hey, I don't want to go forward, I'm calling the union. You've eaten too many donuts before you rode me. I'm not going to go cantering and carting you around. The day that he asks that question, I need to be pretty quick to say, well, no, you have to go. And not silly about it, where I've talked to some guys and the horse doesn't want to go forward, and he said, so I rode him for the next 20 kilometers to let him know that I'm the boss and he's got to go forward. So you rode him through his bad patch, let's say, and then he went a little bit more and he got acceptance. And then you did another 15 kilometers worth of enforcing why he hates people and why he doesn't want to go to work. If I have an argument, I'm just gonna, or a heated discussion, I'm gonna do what's needed, come out the other side, do a little bit more, and then stop. So the first thing I want him to do is stop and bend. And I'll reassure him that that's a great position to be in. And then move his hip out. And then lead his front end out. So one rein stop, and I'll do a video on all the reasons that you could use a one rein stop. But in his case, it's if anything too rowdy happens, I need him to be comfortable to, okay, I got to stop and bend and not feel threatened. So that's why the first bit is stop, stand still, reassure. Like, this is a fine spot to be in, and I'm here, and he gets a good look at me. And then we move on to that physical aspect of like, move your hind quarter, move your front. I talked on the last ride about why we use one lead. So he knows that lead's on his left. I'm going to keep it on his left for a while, especially when I go trotting and cantering. I'm not going to move it around too much. G'day. Thank you very much for watching. I do really appreciate it. This video of Gino's journey is meant to be more of a entertainment video, not educational, as in it's not a how-to video. All horses react and start differently. If you are going to attempt to start your own horse, you really need to enlist the help of a seasoned professional, or get a seasoned professional to do your horse for you and get them started. It's not an easy job, and it's not a job to be taken lightly, because this is your horse's introduction to the rest of his riding career, and it's really not to be messed with. So take it for what it is. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's been a lot of fun to share, and I really appreciate that you've taken the time to watch it and that you'll keep watching the channel. Thank you very much. Cheers.